G'day, I'm Shaz Jones and I'm your host of BibleHax. We're all about hacking the Bible to grow your business God's way. I'm very excited to be joined by my guest today, which is Leake. Wes, welcome.
Thanks, Shaz. So good to be with you.
I wanted to take you back to December, just before Christmas, and you're in Israel and you're about to climb Mount Sinai. Can you tell me about that day?
Oh, that was a fun day. It was a day, I guess my prayer that morning was, God, I want to encounter with you. If I'm going to climb a mountain where one, Moses had his burning bush encounter, and two, where he got the 10 Commandments, I want that kind of encounter with you today.
Wow. Okay, can I ask, and I've never asked a man this before, what were you wearing?
So I've got a t-shirt and that says, God, what is on your heart for me today? And so some of you know I'm a huge fan of a book called Two Chairs. And that's a question that we ask God every day. God, what's on your heart for me today? And that was really my prayer for that day. God, this is, we're in St. Catherine's. It's in the middle of nowhere really. And it's a historical location. We're staying at a monastery that's more than a 3,000-year history, and thinking, God, my heart is to encounter you. It'd taken us a lot to get there. And there was a lot of things that were going on, even in the preparation to climb Mount Sinai that day, a lot of bartering, a lot of paying of money. Oh my. And an hour's camel ride and walking up a mountain that is steep, and thinking, how the heck did Moses do this without, they wouldn't have had a path like we had to follow, or shops on the way up, because there's little kiosk things, on the way up, not all the way up. But I'm thinking, oh man, Moses did some stuff doing it. He deliberately did some stuff to encounter God. And I was just thinking, God, we're doing a lot here to encounter you. I want to hear from you.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk a bit about that preparation, because I saw in your post on Facebook that day, or after you climbed, that you were talking about the preparation of Exodus 19 versus Exodus 20. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, you've got me going my mind. This is the great thing of remembering stuff, isn't it? I think I've actually just come from a meeting with a guy that I meet with every month. And I think one of the things I was really getting at was that so often one of the things that God really spoke to me about that day was, I'm really good at asking God about how to prepare for a meeting, or prepare for, what's next, what's coming up. But what God gave Moses was stuff that literally changed nations. Like you think about the 10 Commandments, it is the basis of the laws that are in any Western civilization today. And God was just encouraged, like this actually came as I was walking down the hill, because there was a lot involved in going up the mountain, and it wasn't until I was walking back down and just reflecting on everything. God was just challenging me, whereas it's time for me individually, and I think for the church as a whole, let's go after the stuff that is going to be the framework for nation changing or world changing stuff.
Wow.
And
I feel like if I had read that, I would be like reaching for my fluoro pink highlighter now and underline. Just say that again, please.
So it's time to go to God for the stuff that is nation changing stuff, that is world changing stuff. Right. Because I like, we're dealing with Shaz, I sit on 4 different boards. One of them is a Christian school, and some of the stuff that we're dealing with at the moment is just beyond belief. And the world has changed. The world seems to be trying to move on from Christian basics and ethics, but yet actually in so doing, what are we missing out on? But God has the answer to this.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that no matter what situation we're facing, God has the answer. He has a solution. And part of them, one of my things, and I do a listening prayer thing every week, is comes from the fact it's stop shouting at God. Because one of the things God said to me recently was, stop shouting at me, Wes. And I said, God, I'm not shouting at you. I'm not. And he says, yeah, but Wes, every time you come to me with something you want, it's like you're shouting at me because you're not listening to what I want. And so, 2 Chronicles 7:14, if my people will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, then I'd hear from heaven and heal the land. Mm-hmm. God has been saying to me, Wes, that humbling is actually when you come to me, is laying down any agenda that you have. And then, coming, so, and I'm mixing a few things together because this is where God's taking me on this journey, and it kind of mixes in with some of the stuff that happened on Mount Sinai for me. If Jesus is interceding for you and me right now, which he is, Romans 8 talks about that, then I want to know what he's interceding for me about.
So do I. It's a great question.
I want to know. And, so often, because it's an alignment with him. So this whole thing of, this is like, I know there's a huge thing around decrees and blah, 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 blah. But actually, that's where I think God is saying, stop shouting at me. Would you just come from a posture of what I have for you and start with that, and then go from there, like joining with him in what's happening so that we can see that unfolded. Because like, we can come up with the best plans in the world, but you know what? They may not be God's plans, and how many times do we put some stuff in place and say, God, please bless us. God, please bless us. Or like the other thing too is, we hear something from God and then we just run off and do it. And we fall flat on our faces. And I said, God, you told me to do that. And he said, yes, but you needed to come back to me. Like, a lot of times I find that God gives me something just to get me moving. And it's like, I refer to it as Abraham and Isaac. God told Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. Yes. And the great thing about it was Abraham was obedient. And it said the next day he got up and did it, which for Abraham was a big thing, because Abraham actually had a history of disobedience right from the start. God says, leave your people, leave your country and your people. What does he do? He leaves his country and takes his people. So, he always so God took him on this journey of immediate obedience. But that was because God wanted to show him something. And Abraham had to keep going back to God. And this is one of the things, like, it's, God says, yes, marry this person. But, it's, you have a relationship in that marriage. You need to keep talking, keep doing that. It's at the same time when God speaks to you, you've got to go back to him, because often when God speaks to me, I interpret it the way that I think I know what that means, but often God says to me, whereas you've interpreted that way, but that's actually not how I want you to think about it. And this is why I need to go back to him. And I've got numerous stories about that, and I've gone on too long. But so these are all the things that God's been speaking to me about over the last couple of months, and which is why like the trip up to Mount Sinai for me was like, okay, God, what are you saying? And there was a lot happening and a lot going on. We have a lot happening, a lot going on at the moment, but that quietening yourself down taking that time to listen. And it wasn't really until I was walking back down and just by myself and just processing everything. God, what do you want to speak to me about through this? Yeah.
That's
Too
really
much noise these days, yes.
Yeah, it's really cool because I hadn't really seen before, like throughout the Bible, there's so many individuals who are nation builders and nation changers. And if you think like right from Genesis, Abraham, part of the blessing of Abraham was that he would become a nation. There wouldn't be a nation of Israel today if it wasn't for one individual tapping into God's plan. And even though he was partially obedient, partially disobedient, he started that journey to literally create a nation. But it wasn't just him, like Joseph radically changed the taxation system basically to take a portion from the citizens and use that. And he fed it says the whole world came to him as the famine got. So it was not only nation building, but global building. Obviously Daniel and David and Esther, and like I could go on. I'd never seen before how much the Bible is a story about one person building in a larger context. Excuse me. So I wanted to kind of delve into that a bit more, and in particular with business people watching, what are some of the things that business people can do, or that God's been talking to you about doing to have those nation building frameworks?
And I had to preach on the weekend and was reminded of something that T.D. Jakes has written a book called Soar, which is just fantastic. And he's talking about, when God gave us a tree, God gave us trees, for example. He gave us, like, you go back to Genesis, and you can get stuck in Genesis 1, 2, 3, because it says he gave us everything that we needed. He didn't give us a chair. He didn't give us a pen. He didn't give us an alphabet. he didn't, he didn't give us a mobile phone, but he gave us the ingredients to put all that together. You think about the guy who invented a jet. Well, I don't know whether it was a guy, the person who invented a jet. Can you think about, like, how has the world changed from a chair? How has the world changed from a pen? You can be a nation-building person from just one little thing. Like,
that's good. I like that.
You think of, like, CSIRO guy, the guy who invented Wi-Fi. Like, talk about, that's nation-changing and nation-building. So I think sometimes we're looking for the huge thing. Yes, but like to Moses back then, getting like a set of 10 commandments, he would have not had any idea about the impact that those 10 commandments would have on the future. He was just thinking about his community. Something I was struck with on the weekend, because I was, the Lord's Prayer is an incredible thing. And, wherever you go in the world, people know the Lord's Prayer. But just as I was musing with God about this, the disciples said to Jesus, "Teach us to pray." And the response was the Lord's Prayer. What if the disciples hadn't asked that question?
What is the question?
And this is so one of the things is, and a big beef of mine at the moment is, it's okay to ask God questions. Now, Shaz, you've grown up in the church. I've grown up in the church. For some reason, I thought we weren't supposed to question God. Now, where on earth they get it from? I don't know whether it was because, we weren't supposed to question church leadership, and we've projected that onto God. I don't know where it's come from, but I've always had this thing. But God has been telling me lately, ask me questions. Because if you look at, like, take Mary, Mary is, this angel appears to her and says, you're going to have a child, and like, can you imagine? So often God speaks to you about stuff, you think, what the heck, God? What, you may get a prophecy or whatever it is. He may just drop something into you. But what did Mary do? She went back and asked God, how can this be? Now, that wasn't being a derogatory. Like, she was just like, hang on, you just told me this. How can it be? The brilliant thing about that was she got so much more information. The Holy Spirit is going to come upon you. He told her how she was going to fall pregnant, and he told her all these amazing things. So questioning God is just like you're asking me questions now, and you're getting information out of me.
Yes, I am.
This is the way relationship works. God is foremost saying, I want a relationship with you. He created this world so that he could have relationship with us. The way we build relationship is to ask questions. So ask away. Now sometimes God may not answer your question. And I know some people probably, I've been asking God that for a while. Well, it could be that you're just asking the wrong question. So I have learned this little trick. God, what question am I supposed to ask?
Oh, that's a good question. A meta question.
Yes. And it's often, like the other day, we're doing this listening prayer time around the Lord's Prayer. And at the end of it, it says, something along, hang on, I've got it right here in front of me. Let me grab it. It says, for if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. So I just said, okay, God, is there anyone I should forgive? Oh, you really shouldn't ask that question, because he'll tell you.
Yeah, it's one thing to ask the question. It's another thing to receive the answer.
So I received the answer, and it was actually, in my case, it was an institution I had to forgive. And but you know what? It actually released something that day, and it was just incredible. So this is like, as we're reading the Word and as we're immersing ourselves in it, as we're, God speaking to us personally, have a conversation with God about it. And how many times do people say to you, but God told me this? I said, yes, that's great. That's fantastic. But what is he telling you? What was the follow-up conversation? What was that like? What have you gone back to him and said? Because, yeah, I could tell you lots of stories about how stuff.
Well, I'm really interested in letting our listeners know, how do we do that? Like, can you talk a bit about the Two Chairs book, or the method that you use?
Yes.
Not just for our business, but like just then when you said that the Lord's Prayer is about forgiveness, and in my case, it was an institution, that's enlarging my context, because I'd never thought of before about forgiveness beyond the personal. So now I know, it's not just personal, it can be at an organization level. And I'm sure that it can be at a national level as well. So, I know when Daniel was praying, he was like repenting on behalf of his nation. So there are larger contexts that you're just building into my life right now. Like, wow. Tell us how the Two Chairs method works. How can we do this in a practical sense?
Okay. So just some brief background. So Two Chairs is written by a guy called Bob Beaudine. Bob is one of the top sports and entertainment recruiters in the USA. So if the commissioner for baseball needs to be recruited, or if a big sports star needs to be recruited, it's his company that does that. His father actually started the whole recruitment industry, and went from there. And so quite a history of that. His mom taught him this, and it's not something like, you talk to many other people and they use it themselves. like it's been around. But I love the framework, and I love the, like, Shaz, I've been in church for a long time, and if you read books about hearing the voice of God, they're always in a church context, not a business context. So, so if you're in church and God says, pray for someone and they're, for healing, and they're not healed, okay, yes, they may go home to be God, but it doesn't affect your bottom line. But if you hear something from God and you implement it in your business, it's going to show up in your financials the next day. Like there is, in doing that. So the whole 2 chairs, there's a couple of things with it. One, so there's 3 questions, kind of a framework around it. Does God know your situation? Yes, he does. Well, he probably knows that better than what you do. Is it too hard for him to handle? No. Does he have a good plan for you? Absolutely. So ask him. So the idea, and a lot of business guys, business people are visual people anyway. So the idea is setting up 2 chairs. One for you, like you can see a chair in the background. One for you and one for God. And just
so that is the whole concept, is that God has a chair at the table. Like you are interacting with God.
Sometimes it just really helps you to have a focus.
Yeah.
Like often when I'm driving along in the car, and the seat next to me is empty, I just picture Jesus in that seat. Okay, Jesus, it's you and me today. Let's have this conversation.
Again, I hadn't thought about doing it in the car, but that's the perfect setting, isn't it? Because you've got the 2 chairs there.
2 chairs there.
Great.
So it's coming to him and simply saying, God, what's on your heart for me today? And then stopping and listening and asking him and listening to what he has to say for you. It's like, and it really is a whole process of redirecting things, because like I've got a lot of stuff that I want to do and achieve, and he does put those desires in our heart, and I get that and understand that. But the practicalities are working that out, and God is very good about practicalities. He's very good about practicalities. God, what is on your heart for me today? Often, the other great thing about this is it's for Christians and non-Christians. You look at the Bible, God speaks to non-Christians just as much as he speaks to Christians. In fact, like if he didn't speak to you, you wouldn't have come to know Christ in the first place. He's always issuing this invitation to us. And there's some theological stuff around that as well. He created you. He created each person that's here. And we can talk about being co-creators with God, because that's a very obvious thing where a couple co-creates with God to create his creation. But, one of the stories I love in 2 chairs is that often a story of a guy who wasn't saved. He sat down in the 2 chairs and he said it was like God hugged him. And, for some people right now, you just need a hug from God. It's just, and I actually take people on it. There's one thing that I use to take people on a journey, just doing that, of just picturing Jesus and sitting next to him and putting your head on his breast and listening to him and allowing him just to embrace you. Because like there's, it's just, and it's amazing how much stuff gets melted away. But so this guy did this, and the first day was just like that. The next day he was running late for his appointment. He looked at the 2 chairs and thought, I haven't got time. And God said to him, no, sit. And often it's just a thought or things like that. And it was interesting. God said to him, this guy had a major presentation to do that day. He'd been working on it for 6 months, and God said to him, they're not going to accept your presentation today. And he said, you need to go have a chat to the vice president of the company and see what he says. So he was thinking, I haven't seen the vice president in 6 months, am I just going to rock up at his door? So he did. He went and rocked up his door, and the guy asked, what are you working on? and he said this, and the vice president gave him some changes. So he said, I had 3 hours to change my presentation along the lines of what the vice president said. I went to the meeting, and it turned out that even the people he was working with were poo-pooing his idea. But the vice president walked in and said, that's exactly what we need. And it was accepted. And he said, God's a ninja. He knew exactly what was going on.
God's a ninja.
I know we've got to watch the time here, but I arrived early for this meeting one day, and which is unusual for me. And I'm sitting in the car 15 minutes, before the meeting. And I thought, what the heck am I going to do for 15 minutes? And God said, well, how about you have a 2 chairs time with me? And I said, okay. So this is where I started asking God, what do you want to do in the upcoming meeting? So I said to him, well, God, what's on your heart for this meeting? And it wasn't my meeting. I was asked to attend. And God just said one word, I want you to talk about homeschooling today. I thought, God, that's not on our agenda. He said, no, but I want you to talk about homeschooling today. Anyhow, I went into the meeting. The other person who I was there kind of supporting, she went 10 to the dozen through, what she wanted to achieve. And then it came, we're at the end of the meeting and we all had to go. And the guy turns to me and says, Wes, is there anything you want to talk about? I said, yeah, I want to talk about homeschooling. Because and he said, I said, well, it was with a university. He said, we really want to get into homeschooling and blah, 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 blah. Anyhow, the end result of that was a $1 million contract was signed.
Wow.
With a homeschooling organization in the university. Now, I had no idea about that. And there's a lot of ramifications of that have come out of that. But it became because God said to me one word, raise this issue in the meeting. And it can change everything. We often hear one word from God can change anything. And actually that was 3 years ago. I had a huge meeting.
Before COVID sort of thrust everyone into homeschooling.
Yeah. So doing that. So, you think about that. But, yesterday I had a huge meeting with NDIS, what they call a workforce planner with NDIS, because they're short 1,000 businesses to provide to NDIS customers. But that meeting came from that meeting. Because what it ended up was I ran a class for homeschoolers in teaching them about business, which was another side thing that came out of that meeting as well. And it was the parent of one of those kids that last week, NDIS, these guys had an issue. They didn't do it, but she said, Wes has the answer to that. So they contacted me on Friday and we set up the meeting. And so it was that meeting is going to have other ramifications. So you don't know where one word from God is going to come. So, you as a business person could be sitting there with complex issues, and we have huge issues in business at the moment. But that one word, God can give you that. And you look at LeTourneau, wrote Mover of Men and Mountains. He didn't know how to do things, God gave him dreams and visions. George William Carver, the guy who told everyone he was an agricultural economist. He told everyone to plant peanuts. It was really great. So many peanuts, but then they couldn't sell the jolly things. So he said to God, what's in a peanut? And he told him 300 uses for a peanut. And you and I eat peanut paste today because someone asked him what's in a peanut.
Yeah.
So you don't know. You and I have a chance to sit down every day and constantly through the day with the God who created the universe, who knows everything. You think about these things, all the rare minerals that now go into doing this that were never used until now. But God put them in the earth right back then.
Wow.
There's stuff out there now that is here that God's just saying to you, come, just ask me and I will show you stuff. So that's nation change. Talk about nation change. When we went to the Middle East, we lived in the Middle East 25 years ago, and the mobile phone has changed that. You know, we've got young kids driving a donkey and cart with their mobile phone in their hand. You know, it's just, you know, yeah, all these Islamic women with their hijabs on, with the phone is stuck in their ear as they're working along there. And I'm thinking, man, they changed that. Like, that's nation building. You know, think about the apps that have come and what's been allowed, you know, because of that. What is that one thing like that God's calling you to? And it may not be one thing, but it may be starting, you know, so it's everything starts with an idea. And this whole thing that we are co-creators with God. God, how can I create with you to see that? And which is, I know I'm going on a bit here, sure, but so getting back to the Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This is something I've been pondering a bit. Okay, we've only had books for what, the last 400 years? Books have been in heaven since the beginning of time because it talks about the books in heaven.
Right.
So what other inventions are in heaven that we need to be bringing to earth right now?
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's the essence of Bible hacking, because we know spiritual technologies that none of our competitors do, because we have that spiritual intellect when we go to God and ask him. And as you said, it's resetting the foundations. Like, Moses didn't just answer a personal need, he reset the foundations for the whole community, which ended up being the nation of Israel. Abraham kind of started on the journey. Moses definitely kick-started the journey even further on with their own real estate, their own land. It's just so inspiring. It's amazing, you know, from that one trip up Mount Sinai, that very hard and arduous journey, what God has revealed out of that. And then the opportunities from a waiting time where you think, oh, I've only got 15 minutes, what can I do? And just one word for one meeting, and that becomes $1 million contract, and then another opportunity opens, another opportunity opens. That's the way God works, isn't it? It's miraculous that he uses us in that setting.
And he's very good about taking something from and taking nothing and creating something out of it.
Yeah.
You know, he just, you know, and somebody listening now could be thinking, I have nothing. I have nothing. You have the God of the universe on your side. Just ask him and he can create something. Well, Shaz, I know we're running out of time.
We are. We've got 2 minutes left, Wes. I know people are going to want to contact you and work with you and find out more about how you are generating these $1 million contracts from a 15-minute waiting time. How can they get in touch with you?
Best go on LinkedIn, Wes Leake, WESLEAKE. Look me up. Go from there, or Facebook. Businessblessings.com.au is our company. We're just in the process of revamping our website at the moment. We've just relaunched our Business Blessings radio podcast, so have a look at that. Also, our listening prayer time. Every Wednesday morning, I do a listening prayer time for an hour, where I have about 15 people who come together. We look at a passage of scripture, we sit for 20 minutes and just listen to God. And then everyone shares what God has spoken to them about. And it's just, we hear the voice of God in community. And I think this is very clear that as we hear, you know, like yesterday we did 1 Corinthians 13, you know, around love. And it was just amazing as different people shared what God spoke to them about it. We get a consensus about what God is saying to us. And I think that's one of the things, particularly from a Pentecostal perspective, it's all about the individual. It's all about the pastor has the word and we follow his vision or her vision blindly. Poo-poo. That's not what the kingdom of God is about. Kingdom of God is about us coming together and going from there.
Well, thank you for coming together with us today, Wes, and thank you for listening. excuse my voice. I know there's lots of options out there, so the fact that you've tuned in today is miraculous to me. Please go to facebook.com/BibleHax, that's BibleHax, and join our community and be a contributor. Let us know what God is saying to you. Thank you for joining us today.